Thank you, John. Well, this time of the year, everyone's excited, and everyone's undefeated at this time of the year. We have some big challenges in front of us here. Number one, we're going to play a great Westchester football team and a proud program. Coach Zwan and his staff have done a tremendous job there. They're been in the playoffs the last 2 years. They got a great group coming back, and they know what to do and how to do it. So it's a huge challenge. To go up there and play the Rams, obviously we got a 9-hour bus drive in front of us, and there's some challenges associated with that with travel, and then to get up there and play them even though it's an opener, it's a pivotal game, and it's a very important game for both teams as we start our seasons, and it's a heck of a challenge for us. We have some veterans on both sides of the football. We have 6 returning starters offensively and 6 returning starters defensively, which bodes well. Our punter is back. Our battery is back with the short snappers and long snappers. We'll be breaking in a new kicker, but he's a veteran as well, and we're excited about what he can bring. Defensively, we have 6 starters back. I think the strength of our group defensively is up front with 3 of our 4 starters back up front with Lindre Sparrow, Placid Ajoku, and Chris Green. That's a formidable group up front. Miles Braswell will be in there as well as a new starter, but played significant minutes a year ago. Both our safeties are back, Chris Schaefer and Marcus Kincaid, both outstanding football players. Marcus was an all-conference player a year ago. Chris, in his own right, is a potential all-conference player, in my opinion. Was a transfer from Appalachian State a year ago, and he was also selected one of our team captains this year, as was Lindre Sparrow up front. So I think we'll be well-led defensively. We'll have some new corners out there, which is always can keep you up at nights if you're a coach or a secondary coach or a defensive coordinator. With some new corners out there, particularly against Westchester, they can throw it around and have some talent out there. Flipping back to the offensive side, we're excited with Mike Patrick, a B-back. He played significant minutes at slot last year. He has a B-back background as well. He's a team captain and a tremendous leader for us offensively. And then when you look at the leadership offensively, certainly starting up front with Joe Ray at right tackle, a 2-time first-team All-American, potential 3-time All-American should he perform at the level he has, and we certainly anticipate that he will. Dale Howard is back at center, who started all last season and is a force inside. And Jacob Slagle's back at left tackle as a starter as well. So our 2 guards, Jaleel Roberts and Tyler Evans, are both new, and they're going to have a heck of a challenge inside with Westchester, because I think they're pretty sporty up front, and they have a special player too on their interior defensive line that'll be a real challenge for our guys to open their starting careers. So we're excited about Evan Sims at quarterback. Evan, obviously, for those of you who followed us last year, came in and played admirably. And when Miles Freeman went down a year ago, Evan, his first start a year ago was on the road against Carson Newman, and he played well, and then he played well in Mars Hill prior to that. He has speed and talent. And he has some experience. So, again, he's prepared well, and we have high expectations for Evan at quarterback. And at slot, Calvin Edwards is back. Calvin was the only true freshman that we played a year ago. The entire freshman class was redshirted a year ago, with the exception of Calvin, and he was the backup to Gerard Spears a year ago. And, again, Calvin played minutes and has real speed and understands the system, and last year was a great year of preparation for him through practices and playing. James Phillips also started off and on last year slot, and James is back. And also Chris Dan Ivory will be in the mix at slot as well. Both starting receivers are back with Grayson Wells and Vic Brandon, so there's a ton of experience there with those 2 guys. And Pat Randleman is in the mix right behind them. Richard Hall, who we moved out to receiver this past spring, is right behind them. So, the bottom line is that we think we have a good team. A good blend of a veteran presence and then some youthful inexperience certainly out there, and that's where, as a coach and as a staff, we're scratching our heads a little bit, because we just don't know. It looks pretty good in practice, but until you go trade paint with another institution of higher learning, you just don't know what you got. So it's time for us to go play someone else. Certainly we have a tall task in front of us, playing up at Westchester, a team with a great tradition, a proud past, and a bright future under Coach Juan. So it's a challenge, but we're excited about the challenge and excited to go play Westchester on the road. With that, I'll take any questions anyone may have.
With Westchester, go a little in depth as to what specifically they bring to the table that makes them such a quality team to face week one.
Sure, I think when you look at them offensively, they're large human beings up front. That's going to be a challenge. They're 300 pounds across the front. The left tackle's 345 and an all-conference player. They're big and they outsize us considerably. So that's a challenge we really face. They have an all-conference running back, Monk back, who ran for over 1,200 yards last year, and he's a special player. He'll be difficult to contain. I don't know if you can stop him. We just hope to contain him. They have another player, Elliott, who played running back last year. They've moved to receiver. He had over close to 700 yards rushing, I believe, a year ago, and close to 400 yards receiving a year ago. So he's a dual threat purpose. He's a tough guy to tackle in space. He's a playmaker for them, and they got talent across the board. Obviously, they have breaking in a new quarterback. Their quarterback from a year ago was an all-conference player, an all-American player, who's gone, but they have some capable guys waiting there, for their turn. They had a few guys there fighting at the bat rack to get that opportunity. So again, I think early on, they got a great running back and a big offensive line, and that sounds like a pretty good plan early in the season to me offensively. And they got some playmakers. Defensively, and again, they have some guys back. I think the guy that stands out, they have a defensive line a defensive lineman in I believe Juan, who is a special player. He's an All-American player, and I think that's. He's the bell cow. If I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, I'd say he's probably the bell cow of that defense, and who they rally around. And they have a ton of talent. When you play a team like Westchester, you're going to play a team that's going to be a physical, hard-nosed group, Simon Sound, and they're going to have a plan for us. Obviously, they've had all off season to prepare for this football game and all training camp to prepare for this football game. Where sometimes you can get caught it's a challenge as a defensive staff preparing for our style of offense if you only have 3 days, but if you have 3 weeks, it makes it a little more bearable to figure out who has fullback and quarterback and pitch.
Coming off a couple record years here at LR running the football, you confident that your unit's able to match that this fall, or what are you looking at for your running backs after that impressive of a couple seasons?
Well, sure. Well, the standard's set pretty high here offensively. Over the last couple of years, rushing the football, and we're not going to deviate from our plan. That's who we are. That's our DNA here as an offensive unit. So that's the plan. Now, whether we can do it at that level or not remains to be seen. Last year we did it better than anyone in the history of Division II football, and that's a tall task to duplicate that. But I am confident in the players we have and the returners we have and the skill that we have that we can be an explosive offense. Like I said, early in the season, you're usually not playing with the same amount of rhythm and confidence you are usually as an offense in this type of system. In our system, you grow as the season goes on. And again, with the guys out there for the first time, I don't know if it's going to look like the Harlem Globetrotters right away. But typically in first games don't come down to the fancy bells and whistles. First games comes down to the turnover battle and the kicking game. And whoever wins those two phases of the game usually has the upper hand in an even contest to open a season.
Talk about your wide receivers a little bit. You brought back a lot of experience with 2 starters there, but everyone knows you don't pass it very much. Talk about how important their perimeter blocking is in their experience.
Well, there's no question. Our receivers are the unsung heroes in our offense, and both Vic Brandon and Grayson Wells do a tremendous job on the perimeter. Of blocking safeties, blocking corners, and at times blocking linebackers. They're both physical. They have excellent size. They're both 6'2", 200 plus, and they have a ton of experience. Nothing they see out there will surprise them. And if they get caught off guard by something, they're able to have the tools in their belt to fix it. Again, we're not going to be prolific throwing the ball. We aspire to be efficient throwing the football. And if we can do that and protect it, and again, the passing game is it's just not the receivers, it's not just the quarterbacks, it's all 11 working together. But if we can do that and be efficient throwing the football, then that just makes us a more explosive offense.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the linebacker position with Tuna graduating and who's stepping up to fill that role?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple guys we lost defensively that you're scratching your head, how do you ever replace them? We talk of Tanner Botts as one of them being a first-team All-American. I'd say Blake Baker's the other one being first-team All-American or has been. And then O'Neal, Blake out at corner was an All-American last year. So we lost 3 guys that All-Americans a year ago defensively. So that you just don't plug and play necessarily. We are excited. You know, Rodney Singleton's back at outside linebacker, our bandit position. And Rodney is a 2-year starter. There's only going to be a junior. So Rodney's a talented player. He's capable of taking his game to another level. Jordan Forney played a ton for us last year with the Botts brothers. I believe Jordan had, close to 50 tackles this season ago and played significant minutes for us. So it won't be Jordan's first time out there. Tanner Robinson has competed well through last spring and through training camp, and right now Tanner has the upper hand. And there's a couple other guys that are right on his heels. So I think that's we got to keep our eyes open to all of it early on. But I think we'll be just fine there. And like I said, they're prepared and they've trained, and like I said, they're right with their eyes and the details and their fundamentals. And like I said, we have a tall task in front of us against Westchester because they're going to challenge us. There's no doubt.
Have there been any players that really surprised you on that surprised you in a positive way in these past 3 weeks or so, as far as their improvements and so on and so forth?
Sure. I think our corners are a pleasant surprise. We thought they were physically talented, but I think through practice, and again, you're looking at it through a foggy mirror because we haven't played anyone else yet. But I think we have a real battle going on out there between Kyle Duggar and C.J. Cody. They're 2 very talented, young players out there. Particularly in Kyle's case, is exceptionally young. He's a redshirt freshman. But he has all the physical skills and traits that you're looking for in a corner. CJ has played for us and even started games for us at corner and a safety, so he's been out there. Cliff Barrett has a ton of talent and has played for us as well. And so I think those 3 guys have separated themselves at corner, and Malik Scott has also stepped in as a transfer from North Dakota State. Right in there with that group. So those are our 4 corners. And like I said, I'm really encouraged by the athleticism in that group. Now it remains to be seen whether they can go perform at a high level when we play something in different colored uniforms. But those were the guys that stood out, I would say, defensively, along with Tanner Robinson at linebacker, who just continues to press us and step up. I'd say offensively, Jaleel Roberts and Tyler Evans at guard have been the guys that just in the absence with Jimmy Bear, who was an All-American last year, graduating, and Matt Vellani stepping aside, those guys have filled in and have a ton of athleticism inside. They just don't have all the experience yet. So, but they certainly have the tools to be excellent players for us. Nothing from the Kenweather families?
Well, if memory serves me correct, Coach Goldsmith talked about after a year that he wished he was better with math, coming from the Division I level to the Division II level. How, after you and your other staff that came with you from Division I, what differences do you see here, and what have you maybe changed after a year?
Well, we haven't changed a lot, but I do understand where Coach Goldsmith was coming from, talking about the difficulties of being a Division II coach coming from the Division I level. There's so many different rules attached to it when you're talking about scholarship equivalencies and how to break those up and eligibility. And there's a ton of things there that don't cross your desk at the Division I level that other people are doing. To that degree, I sympathize with the situation in West with their tight end, who's an All-American player who's now ineligible. I feel terrible for the young man. I feel terrible for Coach Long, quite frankly, because it can easily happen. We're fortunate there's some checks and balances in place here that we do our best to ensure through our administration and some other assistant coaches that we're not put in that place. But it is a challenge. It's not easy, and there's a ton of it's much harder to be a Division II coach than a Division I coach. And at the South Atlanta Conference meetings, we were all talking about that as coaches. There's so much more to do with budgeting, with travel, with you name it, that usually at the Division I level is someone else's job.
You mentioned right at the start the 9-hour bus ride up to Westchester is going to pose a little bit of a problem. In addition to that, you guys aren't even home until October 3rd. How, over the course of the season, is that going to pose a challenge, or does it pose a challenge that you open up with 4 away games?
Well, it is a challenge. Initially, it wasn't intended to be that way. Initially, Concord was scheduled to open this weekend, and then they joined a different conference, and we lost that home game. And then Westchester and us were the last 2 around the country. They're willing to play each other, quite frankly, at that late a date. So we're excited about this opportunity, and you're right, there is a tremendous challenge in place, not only this week, but for the following 3. We have to bring a road warrior mentality to it through these first 4 games of the season. And in a way, I think it gives our team a chance to bond and rally together and away from the distractions sometimes you have at a home contest, and get a young football team. I mean, we only have 11 seniors on the team, so we're a young team. That'll give us a chance to grow up a little bit and find out something about ourselves. And this opening game, you're always going to find, we're going to find out a lot about ourselves in this opener. And typically you make the most improvements from week 1 to week 2. And if we can keep the arrow pointed up, and with the talent we have and the young talent we have, I think we're in for an exciting season.
A lot of guys that were on the field just this past season are now on the coaching side of things, either as a student assistant or GA. Joe Anderson now even as a full assistant coach. So how has their role been a part of the team for this preparation for the season?
Well, I think it's been invaluable, and I think it's been I think from their perspective, it's a lot different than maybe they thought it was going to be on the other side of the fence. There's a lot of hard hours and work, and you realize, and going through that myself as a young coach, going from the playing side where you thought you had a lot of answers and knew a lot, to going to the other side of the equation, being a coach, and realize, boy, I didn't know anything. That's a transition, and it's an awakening. But it is helpful with those guys because they relate well. Obviously, they were sharing lockers, some of them a year ago, with those guys, and I do think it helps with with only having 11 seniors. I think it helps them having that presence. They're not that far removed. They can help with the leadership in there as well. And the guys, no one is respected more, for instance, as Joe Anderson. The guy's a first-team academic All-American and All-Conference player, and he has the ear of our younger players that just watched how he leads his life. And Tanner Botts and O'Neal Blake and Matt Villani are in the same vein. They're all highly respected guys that have joined our program either as graduate assistants or, in Joe's case, as a full-time coach. So they're the right guys, and I think that's an important thing as a head coach, is to get the right people on the bus. And those guys are the right guys to be on our bus.
Players and coaches get talked about quite a bit early in the season. You talk about how people like Pastor Watts and Michael Flicker and his training staff with the South Atlantic Conference training staff of the year, but they don't all work with players during football season, but they pretty much all do year-round, like Luis does during the summer.
Sure.
How do they?
Well, I've been in a few different institutions, a few different colleges, and the training staff we have here, led by Michael Flicker, is extraordinary. He's not just a trainer; he serves so many other roles for us. He's an assistant coach to me in a lot of ways. He thinks he knows more football than he does, but he is extraordinary. He really has a good feel for it and a good feel for people and character. And he does a tremendous job running our athletic training facility, and it's first class. And we do a first class job, him and his staff, of taking care of our student athletes, and that's first and foremost there. So we couldn't do it without him, because Flick does a lot more than just what meets that job description, as everyone does here at Lenoir-Rhyne in athletics. And then you mentioned Pastor Watts, our team chaplain. He's on call, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And he's a tremendous influence on our team and does a great job as well. And he's a proud alum, so he literally bleeds, LR red, not just red. So We're fortunate here to have a lot of people that care, from our alums to our fan base, and certainly to the people, intimately attached to us in the athletic department. There's a lot of people that care and roll up their sleeves and get the job done and try to waddle, as we say, win all day long.
Speaking of the training staff, have there been any injuries of significance that we should know about in these past few weeks practicing?
The only injury that even reared its head is David Wilkerson, who was sat out a year ago as a transfer linebacker. He had a thumb surgery, and he will be out here indefinitely. It's not a career ender. We'll have him back at some point during the course of the season. He was a contention to be on the field in some capacity, and then that's really it of significance. We've been very fortunate through training camp and our schedule to avoid any serious setbacks of note, and we're going into this game relatively healthy and hopefully have our legs underneath us and be able to play full speed.
You never want to, injuries are bound to happen at some point in a season. Are you confident in your second tier guys being able to step up in the case that a front man, a starter goes down at any point this year?
Well, we're always confident, or else we wouldn't have recruited them, obviously, in their abilities. Now, there's also a reason why some of those guys aren't starting right now, because they're not as good as the guy in front of them. So I think that's an issue you face at Division II football or even 1AA football is depth is the issue. With the limited scholarships you have, at the Division I level, you have 85 full rides. And guys on a full ride or he's a walk-on. At this level, you have 36 as equivalency and you're breaking scholarships up. And so you're not going to have the same depth at this level that you are at the other levels. So you try and do your best to know your personnel, know where your strengths and weaknesses are, and have a plan when a guy does go down and know what he's capable of doing, and give him a chance to execute, within the scheme. So there's challenges there if someone goes down, and certainly if they're wrong at some positions, we may have better depth than at other positions. I spoke of our corner position. I think we have tremendous depth, but like I said, football at times can be a game of attrition, and it's a long season. And there's going to be challenges faced. I looked to a year ago when we lost Ike Whitaker in the first game, who was an All-American. And when Ike went down, no one really heard of Chris Robinson a whole bunch, and Chris Robinson ends up being an All-American. So we're fortunate that we had some depth there at B-back last year. And like I said, inevitably someone's going to go down this year. And again, in football, it's a game of next man up. Well, thank you. Thank you for attending today. Thank you for your support. We're excited about going up to Pennsylvania and play a top 20 team in Westchester. It's a significant challenge for our program. It'll be a great barometer for our young football team as we get started here in the 2015 season. And thank you very much. Go Bears.